Imagine a place beyond the strife, where peace is more than just a dream of life, a world where love is all we know, and every soul can freely grow.
This is St. Patrick's Catholic Church. It is situated along the shoreline of Strangford Lough, between the villages of Kircubbin and Portaferry. The building is so unassuming and simple that if it wasn't for the large Celtic cross and the gravestones, you wouldn't believe it was a church. To understand why this church was so simply built and why it is an important historical monument, we need to delve into the history of Ireland, and in particular Northern Ireland. The province of Ulster, which covers the majority of what is now known as Northern Ireland, was once the most Gaelic province of the country, the least anglicised and the most independent of English control. It was very rural, with very few towns or villages, and the majority of its inhabitants farmed the land, with cattle raising being the main activity. That all changed in the early 1600s, when the English decided the province was ripe for colonisation. So they dreamt up a scheme to turn Ulster into a giant plantation, or a series of plantations, lorded over by wealthy Protestant men from England and Scotland. The official plantation scheme did not extend to counties Antrim and Down. These had been settled a few years earlier. In County Down, two Scotsmen, Hugh Montgomery and James Hamilton, moved to the county in 1605 with the blessing of the English king James I. They brought with them Scots of many families and trades to populate their settlement. The Plantation of Ulster began in 1610. The English and Scots confiscated the land from the local Irish population and then redistributed it to create concentrations of British settlers around new towns and garrisons. The new plantation owners then shipped over workers and their families from Scotland and England to work the land for them. After the new settlers had grabbed the most productive green fields, the local Irish farmers were left with the most barren of land on which to farm. All of this was done to create a new community composed entirely of loyal British subjects who would outnumber the local Irish residents. Another part of the colonisation of Ulster was to give the Protestant Church of Ireland all the churches and lands previously owned by the Roman Catholic Church, and to send clerics over from the mainland to convert the native population to Protestantism. It was a miserable failure, with very few taking up the offer. In 1695 and over the following decades, the English implemented a series of penal laws in Ireland in their effort to control Irish Catholics and the Catholic Church. They banished anyone in the country involved in the preparation of people for religious vocations, their hope being that with no newly ordained priests, the Catholic religion would eventually fall into obscurity. Serious restrictions were placed on priests and the celebration of the Catholic Mass. The building of new Catholic churches was heavily curtailed, and when permission was given, they were to be built from wood, not stone, and away from main roads. Catholic priests were reduced to holding Mass in secret and usually outdoors. St. Patrick's Church is actually constructed on a site where Mass had previously been celebrated in the open air. It was built in 1777, shortly after the Penal Laws were beginning to be repealed, by the Reverend Daniel O'Doran. He was the last parish priest to serve the entire Arch Peninsula. He died in 1785 after being thrown from his horse. He was buried at the ancient church of Ballytruston, near Portaferry, which has for a long time lay in ruins. On a tablet inserted into the wall over his tomb is inscribed, "Here lieth the body of Reverend Daniel O'Doran, heretofore parish priest of the Ards. He departed this life on the 17th of June, 1785, aged 50 years. He was a man of benevolent disposition, a stranger to bigotry, a facetious companion, and universally lamented by a numerous acquaintance." The church is 65 feet by 24 feet and is capable of holding up to 400 people. It is roofed with old Tullycavey slates from a quarry near the local village of Grey Abbey. It speaks to the durability of the slates that they still cover the roof to this day. Within 100 years, 2 new churches were built close by, one just outside Kircubbin at Nuns Quarter and one at Ballycranbeg, in 1865 and 1876 respectively. St. Patrick's at Lisbane was reduced to being a mortuary chapel. Over time it fell into disuse and disrepair. In 1966 the church was restored, with ongoing efforts up to this day to keep it in good condition. The church has never had electricity installed, but it doesn't really need it, as candles set the interior of the building so much more. The 1990 film December Bride, which was filmed up and down the coast of the Lough, filmed at the church, where it stood in as a Presbyterian place of worship. The fact that it is so simply built and decorated meant that it suited the purpose very well. Even so, the altar wasn't exactly austere enough to pass as Presbyterian, so it was completely removed and replaced with a tall wooden pulpit. The middle window was mostly covered by the wooden panel, and the rest was hidden by a fake wall. The bench seats were also replaced with ones that had little doors at the end of each row, known as box pews. In this shot you can see that they covered up the holy water font that is built into the wall beside the door. This is in keeping with it playing the part of a Presbyterian church. I shot a scene at the church for our film Reflections of Kathleen Kilban in 2016. In the scene, two people walk along the path to the church, and the woman discovers a white rose lying on the ground. She picks it up and continues on her way, and the spirit of Kathleen Kilban walks beside her. My wife and daughter, along with my dad, were roped in to perform this scene. St. Patrick's Church was one of the few Catholic churches to be built in Ireland during the time of the Penal Laws. They were built cheaply and simply, and only in areas where the strength, both socially and economically, of the local Catholic community was strong, and if the local English and Scottish overlords were a touch more lenient than their neighbours. St. Patrick's owes its existence to Father Daniel O'Doran. The writing on his tombstone gives us an idea of the man, someone who through the sheer force of his personality willed the building into life. His Protestant neighbours would have been charmed by this intelligent, open-minded man. His parishioners, from the full length of the Arch Peninsula, would have been ready and willing to help him achieve his goal. A man whose death was universally lamented by a numerous acquaintance. The penal laws and restrictions against Irish Catholics were reduced with the passing of the Roman Catholic Relief Act in 1829. In the following 100 years, more than 3,000 Catholic churches were built in Ireland.